Wonderful to meet you. Thank you so much for taking a minute out today.
Thanks, Joe.
So before we get into your work, before we get in, there's so much
Just one
going.
second.
Yeah.
Sasha, would you turn off the... Thank you. There's a fly killer that just went off.
Oh.
I went, no, no, no. I don't know if you heard it, but
We don't need the
thank you.
Again, Michael, it's wonderful to meet you. Before we get into your work, there's so much going on as an author and a teacher and a mentor, just so much wonderful work. I want to begin with something that probably really affected what you were doing, which was 5 years ago. This pandemic changed so much for all of us human beings. How did you make it through that time period, and how has it radiated into your work and world in 2025?
Great. Great question. Well, actually, it was a very interesting time because you know from the book about my wife's murder and the 42 years of being under suspicion. And I left and went to Canada because there was a lot of gossip I was dealing with in my little small town that had kind of gotten to a high pitch. And so I was living in Nelson, BC, and I'm sitting there in the middle of COVID, and I get this call. Hi, this is Officer Wilson. We are just reopening the case on your wife's murder 40 years earlier. So that was my memorable part of COVID. And then I came back to California for the trial, and we spent 2 years in the trial before he was convicted finally of murder. So that's how I dealt with COVID.
Wow, that's wild. So
Yeah.
let's get into the crux and the heart and soul of your work right now. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of 12-year-olds. Kids have a way of getting the truth out of us. It's career day. The curious one in the back of the room is like, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer them?
What do I do for a living? I help people who have a lot of overwhelming situations in their life make peace with them and find stillness.
So you obviously are good at that. How did that happen? How did you get to a point where you're able to navigate this and in turn help people navigate through it?
Well, it's been a lifetime of work, Joe. I mean, really, I was pretty crazed as a young person, without a mother and with a father who was pretty dead because my parents were at Pearl Harbor. So they were right in the middle of the bombing. My father was a fighter pilot, and and then at 2.5, I found my mother hanging. She committed suicide. And my father was just absent most of my childhood, so I was shipped around from many places. So I was a pretty screwed up young person, very angry, very lashing out. Then, as I got older, I got into alcohol and drugs. I was able to perform, so I was good at being able to take care of myself financially, but I was a mess in terms of relationships and that. And then actually in 1980, no, 1972, um, I had come back. I was living in Europe and traveling around, kind of being a bum and doing odd jobs. And I came back and went back into real estate, which I had started, when I was very young, turning houses and selling real estate. And there was a woman there that I just couldn't stand. And then she went and did this thing called the S training. I don't know if you were around then, but became the forum, landmark forum. But she went to this thing, and I ended up kind of liking her. And I thought, how's that a possible? This person who was a total, I couldn't stand to be around her, and I kind of liked her. So she invited me to one of these things, and it was Warner Earhart. It was 2 weekends. It took me a couple months before they had them. It was just starting, really. And they said, write down everything that you want to get out of it. So I had pages, 100 different things I wanted to get out of it. In the 2 weeks of waiting for it, my life started to turn around, which is really interesting. When you make a commitment to something, everything begins to change. Then I took the training, and halfway through the training, I was walking through San Francisco after the first weekend. I was looking and everything seemed brighter and clearer. And I thought, oh my God, do you mean I'm responsible for my own effing life? And that was a huge turning point.
Wow.
And then I started working there. I started leading the programs. I met Gabrielle Roth through that. She was doing a dance. I didn't even know anything about it. I was totally disembodied, couldn't feel my emotions. But I walked into this room with all these people moving and moving their body, and I felt, oh my God, I'm home. So I danced with her for 50 years. I'm still a teacher of five rhythms.
Wow.
Uh, and being in my body really is what saved me. Coming back to my body. I was so numb from all the pain that I experienced. Because at 7, I found my dog hanging. At 32, my wife was brutally murdered. I became a single father. All of these things. I kept then working. I met Buckminster Fuller, learned a lot from him. Um, Studied many different ways, got several degrees in organizational development, and started working in the corporate world, was quite successful in that. And yeah, so, but I've always been, since that first thing in 1972, October 1972, it was like a turning point, like, I want to learn, I want to grow, I want to be an influence in the world. And I made a mess of it for the first couple decades mostly, but I was able to continue to grow. Now, for the last 10 years, I've been studying with, I'm not sure if you know Thomas Hubel's work,
Yeah.
but I'm an avid student. I've been with him for 10 years. I'm a senior student working in the more advanced programs. And I'm working with people with trauma and doing trauma circles, doing individual work, doing workshops. And I'm considering taking the trauma work back into organizations. I'm turning 80 next week. No, Sunday or Monday. Yeah. So
You,
I'm just getting started,
you
Joe.
totally, well, you know what? It's weird that you mentioned October 72. I was born on October 13th, 1972.
I was probably in the training right
That's what I'm
then.
saying. So when you brought that up, I was like, of all months during that year,
Yeah.
1972. So let me ask you this. Is there been a central heroic figure in your life and inspiration? Because a lot of these things that you've experienced and gone through could buckle anybody. One of the incidents could have totally buckled somebody's existence. But it's almost as though you've overcome consistently and gotten stronger and stronger as you've got along. Who has been that inspiration, that hero?
Let me tell you, Joe. I could point to Warner as an initiating place, but what I can really point to, and I think is more important, was the community of Landmark and that area. That
Yeah.
I had a community to sort. So it's one thing to have one person, and certainly Bucky Fuller, just before he died, he pinched me on the cheek and said, "Michael, keep up the good work." That was like every grandfather in the world just gave me permission to be myself.
Yeah.
But really, though, all through it, and in the work I do with trauma, it's community, it's relating, it's relationships, because um, how we evolve is through relationship. When we are first born, how we learn how to self-regulate our emotions, which I had no clue of how to do that. How we learn to self-regulate is through co-regulation. In other words, a caring parent needs to look you in the eyes with love, needs to feel you, needs to sense you, needs to protect you, needs to hold you, needs to touch you. If you didn't get that, you're traumatized. We're all traumatized anyway. If it's not individual, it's familial. If it's not familial, it's collective. It's not collective, it's ancestral, geographic, historic. We're all, and we've just kind of normalized it all. Like it's normal to keep having wars and build bombs. It's normal to have racism. It's normal to have people shooting each. No, that's not normal.
Right.
That's trauma. That's trauma which separates us, disperses the energy, because trauma hits the nervous system. The nervous system's been evolving for hundreds of thousands of years, Joe, right?
Yeah.
And what it's learned to do, the intelligence of the nervous system is that in an overwhelming situation, it's coming over me, and the nervous system says, too much. We got to shut this part of this kid down or he's going to die. And so they shove it down into the body. It shows up as tension or as numbness in our body, and it stays there until we finally feel that. And we feel that when we get witnessed. We were wounded in relationship. It makes sense that in relationship and relating, that's where we heal. And so that's why I'm so passionate about circles and big groups to do trauma work with. Because one person says, "Oh, this happened, and I felt abandoned, like nobody loved me," and everybody else raises their hand and goes, "Yeah, me too." This is the good kind of me too, right? Right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh my God, yeah.
So after 8 decades on this planet, I got to know, do you get to a point where you get a handle on your trauma, where you can heal to a place where it's kind of in the rearview mirror enough for you to move forward? How do you compartmentalize and deal with trauma? And because we all have it, whether we recognize it or not. Like the more I think about all of the voices and all of the interviews and everybody I run into, there's all these things that you bury in your life and it all kind of comes up. Do you ever get to that point where you heal it enough where it's not a factor?
Well, first thing is I don't compartmentalize. I try to decompartmentalize it, number
Gotcha.
one. Secondly, I'm not so worried about where I'm going to get to as where I am. And this is really a problem in trauma healing because there's the place you are and then there's the place you want to get to. And everybody wants to jump over the place you are to get to the ideal place, but that's exactly what's stopping you from being in the ideal place. So it's what does happen is that my reaction time is much shorter. Used to be I get triggered and it could last years, you know. I'd be angry at something forever. Now I get triggered. It might last 5 minutes. It might last an hour or two if it's a really big one. But then I soften, I slow down, I ground, I come back to myself, to my body, to my emotions, to my awareness. And then whatever needs to be felt, seen, heard, held, or protected, that's my job as an adult, but I still have that child part of me that had to adapt to all the trauma. And when that comes up, I have to recognize, oh, there's that 5 year old, there's that 3 year old coming up again. But those have been blended, Joe. They've
Yeah.
been put together. So when I get triggered, I'm usually doing my 5 year old, how I protected myself, how I avoided harm as a child. You know, if I was getting beaten, it wasn't safe. So I had to learn to adapt to that and shrink down because 5 years old, I'm not going to pack my bag and say I'm out of here. But I do. I pack my inner bag, and it's in my body, and it lives as tension and numbness, as I said, in the body. So healing trauma is really integrating that. And integration means that I'm able to feel it and feel the emotions and be with it. I'm not trying to get rid of it. It automatically integrates. So when trauma is integrated, it creates presence. But when it's unintegrated, when I'm carrying all this stuff with me, my trauma becomes my destiny. I keep reliving it again and again because the body wants to heal, right? The body is designed to heal. So, like, I'm in a relationship and I'm having the same argument over and over again for years. Well, that's a trauma that's in a repetition compulsion trying to heal, but we're both banging up against it because, my friend Terry Real says, we marry our unfinished business. That is so true. We marry our unfinished business, because our wounding is going to match whoever we find. We think, oh, this is my soulmate. I'm going to be with her forever. That's just all going to be great. Well, yeah, what you're looking at is the mirror of your trauma. And this is an opportunity to heal, and it's not so easy. But if I can, slow down enough, and that's the problem right now is everything is speeding up, and particularly with technology, which has had a huge, in my book, I have a whole chapter on social media, AI, and post-truth, and how that's impacting us culturally.
Yeah.
And it's happening at a very fast pace. So one of the things that's really important with people with trauma is we have to keep slowing down. And it's still true for me. My trauma gets triggered still,
Yeah.
but I slow down and then the reaction. You know, Viktor Frankl, who was in Auschwitz, right?
Mhm.
For years watching them, horrors of horror. the worst of the worst, right? He said, how did he exactly say it? The last of our, I'm having a senior moment here. The last of our abilities, uh, um, God, sorry,
No, you're
uh,
fine.
is to, what's, what, what he's saying is that our power, our individual power, even in the worst of circumstances, is to choose our attitude under any condition. This is a guy in Auschwitz
Yeah.
who's saying the last of our freedoms is to choose our attitude under any given circumstance. The last of our freedoms.
Yeah.
That's
Wow.
that's amazing.
That
And
is
we
amazing.
remember that, when I'm really triggered sometime, I go, the last of my freedoms is to choose my, reaction under any circumstances. Okay, so there's work to do here. And then I work with the trauma. But it's not about getting rid of anything. It's about making friends with that. There's a
Gotcha.
poem by Rumi called The Guest House. You ever read that?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah, it says, all the sorrows and the upsets, and it's all going to come in, tear your house apart, welcome them as guests.
Yeah.
And that's really the key, is to welcome whatever's arising, to feel into it, because that creates more space, more inner space. And inner space is really important for creativity, for manifestation, for insight, for our ability. So when we're contracted with trauma and fear, which there's so much fear right now in the field, particularly in the U.S. I went to Canada last week and I drove through the Peace Arch, and I'll tell you, my shoulders dropped 2 inches. You know, just
Yeah.
just going through the Peace Arch.
Wow, that's well said. I can't even imagine. It is thick. So, how do you protect yourself as someone that's obviously been through trauma? You're helping people through trauma. You're trying to be a beacon for them. How do you protect yourself and wake up every day to protect and take care of your soul and help others get to that place?
Yeah, that's a really, really important question, and a good question. So when you're triggered, you have to come back to your first level of intimacy, the first circle of intimacy. That's me. So, we have circles that go out. We have me, relationship, family, culture, all of those are like circumferences of my capacity. So I have to come back to feeling that, recognizing, first of all, that I just left my body. So I have to come back to my body. And then I have to feel into it and see. But a big part of this work is sensing myself again, sensing you, sensing me. So I'm feeling myself, feeling you, feeling me. And when I do that, it can move through me. So mostly we have life happening to us. But if we can ground and be still enough, life just moves through us. So when I'm working with a difficult person or something like that, as from a therapeutic view, I have to be grounded and feel them. And if I can't feel them, then I know something is needed that I need to take care of in me, because something is blocking that. I'm absencing myself, or I'm distancing the other person. So I have to come back in to my felt sense of myself before I can feel the other person. People have this myth that we're going to take on other people's energy. That's a myth. We don't take on other people's energy. I taught shamanism for many years for the Shift Network. I was the host of the Shamanic Wisdom Summit. I've been with shamanic practitioners from every corner of the world, and interviewed them and been with them. And they will all say the same thing. Anyone who's actually doing that work is that you don't take on other people's stuff. What happens is their stuff triggers your stuff that hasn't been uh, exposed yet. That's all it is. So I have to feel that when when I'm feeling really down with somebody, that, or really scared or something, I have to not protect, think over there or protect myself from that. I have to allow myself to feel it. Then it moves through me, and then I can actually work with somebody. If I can feel you and I'm working with you, Joe, then whatever is happening is moving through me. I'll feel the fear, I'll feel the anxiety, I'll feel the terror, I'll feel the grief, I have to be able to feel it. Anyone who's a good therapist has to be able to feel the person they are. That's why cognitive therapy does not work, especially for trauma. It's great to, learn some stuff and, cognitive stuff, but Bessel van der Kolk wrote a good book. I don't know if you know it. The Body Keeps the Score.
Yeah.
It's a great book. And it's true. The body really keeps the score. So I have to go with the body when I get triggered. But it's not that I'm taking on someone else's. Now, that doesn't mean if you're in a violent situation, either abuse or someone's holding a gun to you, you don't get out of there. I'm
Right.
not saying that. Hopefully you're in your body enough to feel this dude is dangerous. I need to get out of here.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if I'm used to it and I grew up with abuse, I'm going to be attracted to that.
Yeah. So let's say you have a dream tonight. You run into a much younger version of you, an 18-year-old version, and you could give that young version of you a piece of advice based on this life you've led, the healing you've gone through, the wisdom you've gained. What advice would you give that young version of you?
I do this a lot, Joe. I do it all the time because when I stop and I say, "What age is that?" then I go down and I say, "Okay, that's my 5-year-old." And my 5-year-old was Mickey, and I say, "Mickey, you need something. What do you need? I feel you now and you're triggered. And what is it that I want? I want you to know I love you, that you actually made it through all these issues and they're just coming up again. And I'm here for you. Tell me what you need right now. And my body will respond and tell me what I need." Talking to that younger part is really important. It's everything that ever happened to it. I used to love the Library of Congress. The whole idea of all the information in the whole world in one place. And then I realized I am the Library of Congress. Everything that ever happened in my life and my ancestors, all the way through time, every war, everything is all in my body. I just have to be more and more attuned to the cellular knowledge that is stored in my body. And I can connect with any part, not only of myself, but of my ancestors. And I do a lot of work with ancestor work because lots of times we have allegiances to things that happened in the past with our ancestors that get passed down through generation to generation. And when we can feel that, this sounds kind of woo-woo to people, but it's really true that when I heal a part of me that is an ancestral intergenerational wound, it goes back through time and it heals it. Because I've got a body. The dead ones don't have a body. They can't do the work, but I can do the work. So when I do the work, it heals that back through time. So it's no longer going to be passed on to future generations.
Yeah.
So when I heal, I not only heal, my children, but it goes backwards too. So the more I can heal what's in me, the more it goes forward and backwards, and it also goes outward. It's very horizontal.
Wow. So of everything that you've done in your life and evolved to at this point, what are you the proudest of?
What am I the proudest of? God, I'm not one that's. Hmm. Hey, and I'm proud that I was able to go through, murder, suicide, lots of death and tragedy and that I've made it, and I've made it to a point where I'm content with who I am. The biggest comment I got in my book, traumatized, a love story, healing the wounds that separate, alienate, and marginalize. The biggest comment that I get is, "I thought I was reading a book about you, and when I got done, I realized I was reading a book about me."
Wow.
That is really, I'm proud of that. That makes me feel good because that was the intention of my book in the first place.
So at the end of the day, Michael, everyone has a perception of you. Family, friends, everyone that gets your book, everyone that you've worked with and but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Hmm. I had a thought in meditation the other day, um, and what was I'm trying to remember the word. Um, it was kind of like uh, oh, I can't remember the word. I I thought, what do I want to be when I grow up? I'm turning 80. What do I want to be when I grow up? And I realized that what I want to be is a blessing.
Yeah.
That's what I want to be, is a blessing. And that's what I, aspire to. And it keeps me looking at where I'm separating myself from people, where I'm blaming people, where I'm defending myself. So, if I'm a blessing, then I can hold that, as a learning opportunity, not as something that's broken or wrong. And that's how people hold trauma, as a pathology, as a brokenness, as something I have to get rid of. And it's not. It's actually our teacher. Those parts of us that we push away are our teachers.
Yeah, for sure. So if anyone wants to reach out, they want to hire you, they have questions, they want to get your book, any of the good business, where do they go?
Yeah. Well, first of all, get the book. And it's called Traumatized: A Love Story, Healing the Wounds That Separate, Alienate, and Marginalize Us by Michael Stone. And then if you want to get into if you have the book, I've just started, or it's starting next week actually, a Tuesday morning meditation at 8 o'clock Pacific time. Anyone who bought the book is welcome to an hour with me with a meditation and doing work. So every Tuesday morning, it's great because I'm expensive as a therapist, but you can spend an hour with me every week and do that. You can do individual sessions with me. You can, I'll probably start another online group soon. So get on the newsletter. Welloflight.com is my, WELLOFLIGHT.com is my website. Sign up for the newsletter. There's a bunch of meditations you can click on and get free meditations. And I also have a very popular, I do it twice a year. One's coming up the end of August. I do a workshop called Relational Intimacy, Healing the Wounds That Separate, Alienate, and Marginalize Us. It's a 3-day workshop. I may do a longer one, like a week long, next year. I'm considering that in some special place. I haven't decided where yet, but some beautiful place. So yeah, and that's the best way, is really to sign up for my newsletter. I don't have a lot of time to answer emails, but if you're on my newsletter, then you'll get a newsletter every month. This month was all about dealing with fear, anxiety, and overwhelm. So I write these. I offer a lot of opportunities for people, for healing opportunities. And yeah, so that would be. Yeah.
Love it. I will put these links in the show notes. Michael, what a delight. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your life.
Yeah, Joe, thanks. I love the way you do your show. It's like, I love just like, what's coming up, what's emergent. I don't like scripted things. So good to be with you, brother.
Riffing. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it, man.
Looking to get new clients to your business through cold calling or email marketing? At Agency Y, they envision a world in which small and big companies have equal chances to win new customers in the market. Their purpose is to bring parity and reduce the gap between large and small firms with the help of their cold calling and cold email marketing services. Use the code Joe Dimino 10 at www.agencyyyy.org/coldcallingjoe.php or www.agencyyyy.org/emailmarketingjoe.php to get 10% off your first order. This is Joe Dimino of Neon Jazz and Famous Interviews, and I stand behind Agency Y to meet your business dreams.